Joining me on the desk now is Andrew Clennell, the Sky News political editor. Andrew, you were at the press conference there with Scott Morrison today. You saw it all. We saw some of your exchanges with him. What do you think was motivating him to have all these powers and not reveal them?
Well, I agree with a lot of what you said earlier. It looks like control. It's a control issue. And I guess I had some frustration in that press conference. I was trying to find out precisely why, a year after the initial emergency, he's trying to get his hands on Treasury and Home Affairs. He made some obscure reference to AUKUS, but that's defence, although Treasury can have an impact on that. So I think there were reasons that he never exercised, which seems to be your suspicion, that he thought that ministers might do things he didn't want them to do or weren't going to do things he wanted. So he wanted to have that backup, that control. And it's almost like they did it with health. He was advised to do it with health because Greg Hunt was seen as to have too much power. He thought, hang on, I can keep doing this. But if I tell Matthias Cormann he's going to blow up, if I tell the Cabinet Peter Dutton they're going to blow up.
That's exactly what it looks like. Yeah, I think that's what happened. There was good reason to do the one with Hunt, and Hunt knew about it, and Hunt actually may have even half proposed it.
Yeah.
But he's then thought, well, hang on a second.
I can keep doing this.
Yeah.
And probably helped by staff.
Yep.
And you've been a senior ministerial staffer. The role of staff sometimes, I think, is to give advice so vehement they're prepared to be sacked on it. Where was the staff members? Because politicians come up with crazy ideas all the time. The senior staff, the chief of staff, should be saying, what happens if we do this and it gets out?
Yeah.
Let's think about this. Do you need this power? It doesn't look like that happened at all. It was just enabled. And now he's in a mess.
He's in a real mess, and it's going to damage the coalition and everything that's happening now for Peter Dutton. Let's have a look at what he said about Peter Dutton when Peter Dutton got sick right at the start of the pandemic.
Why did you take over the portfolio when Peter Dutton had COVID? You'd already taken over 2 portfolios. Why did you not do that when Peter Dutton was sick with COVID?
Well, that's a reasonable question. And at that point, we were dealing with the issues in health and finance. We hadn't been moving on to some of the other issues, and that's why it was added later as a precaution.
Well, there's a minister, Home Affairs, out of action, didn't need to replace him. And yet later on, even when he talks about this great unpredictable crisis when Peter Dutton was in defence, didn't shadow his powers then either. Why not?
He was the only one who was really sick. I think, Morrison was scared of Dutton and Cormann. And, that right faction, the fact they were power brokers there, the fact Dutton was an alternative leader. And he was probably scared of telling Josh Frydenberg for the same reason. And yet within a couple of months of doing that, just before the budget, he shadows him, if you like. He invites him to live with him in the lodge. And they spend time together. Frydenberg, my understanding, is furious and feels betrayed.
Now, what happens now for Scott Morrison? Calls for him to leave politics. I think that would be untenable for him now. It looked like a repudiation of all he's done. He deserves surely enormous credit for getting the country through the worst of the pandemic, no matter how some of us disagree with some of the decisions. Do you think he stays in Parliament till the next election? No,
but I think he'll be there for another 6 months to a year. And it would be a bad look for him. I can understand why he wouldn't want to quit now. It's a scandal at the moment.
Yeah.
It'd look like he's admitting guilt and he'd be quitting in disgrace. So he's probably best advised to hang around 6 months to a year. Let's face it, he needs a job. Well, I think a lot of us agree with the scrapping of the super scheme, but not giving politicians absolutely nothing when they've served as Prime Minister. It hardly seems fair that he needs a backbencher's salary to keep going he's been Prime Minister of Australia.
Gone from about 6 jobs to looking for one, you reckon?
He is.
Thanks for joining us, Andrew. I appreciate it. Andrew Clennell there, Sky News political editor.